Welcome to the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend, partner, and the man known to some as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd. How you doing, buddy? Wow,
Good,
it just
man.
seems like I just seen you.
I don't know. Probably because I did just see you
2 nights ago. So
Yeah.
anyway, how are you doing? How's everything in Denver?
I'm doing good. Hey, I was thinking, since you have this incredible resume, do you have any plans in the future to further this history of participating in odd and peculiar contests and competitions?
You have something in mind?
I don't know, but I was going to say there's got to be something weird in South Dakota that you can participate in, and I think we need to get you entered.
Okay, we'll do that.
Google it,
and we'll I'll Google that tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see what's out there.
Okay.
Sounds like that was a pie eating contest, maybe.
There you go. Yeah, there's some weird stuff that happens. I'm sure there's something about throwing buffalo dung, or there's something.
Let's get right to the art, because I'm excited to talk to our guest this week.
Yeah.
He's an artist, painter, writer, and film director. He is a Sundance Institute Full Circle Fellow and Andy Warhol Foundation recipient and assistant director of Hamaatsa. He has a solo exhibition that opens here in Denver, Colorado on July 9th at Thrive Ballpark Workplace entitled Western Hyperreality, The Art of Jesse Littlebird. His Instagram is @Jesse Littlebird. Welcome to the program, Jesse Littlebird.
Woo, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad that you decided to join us. This is awesome. I've looked at your stuff, and you got some really great art out there. So this is going to be a nice episode to talk about, deep dive into some of your artwork and influences and stuff. So, yeah,
I'm excited for it. You guys, Denver, is a very poignant place, and important to the Western conquering of this nation. So it's pretty cool to have a show up there. Shout out to ARTAOS Gallery, Forge, and Aya for hooking this up. I'm excited to be up there. This will actually probably be one of the biggest exhibitions of my work thus far, in terms of just the amount of work that I'm bringing up there. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool moment. I'm still young. I'm going to be 29 next month. That's 2 years older than Basquiat was when he died. So that's I look at that a lot, that's kind of interesting, good place to start.
Yeah. So how did you get hooked up with Forge and Aya?
So, last year, crazy year. For me, it actually ended up being one of the best years for my art ever. We all kind of were going through the same thing. I kind of just delved really deep into my practice. It was great to have the amount of time and to be alone, and in that I made some good connections through my good homie Greg Farah. Shout out Fahrenheit Gallery in Santa Fe. He hooked it up with Forge and Aya up in Denver. They had a partnership, ARTAOS Gallery. So, I went up there during Crush Walls, actually. I got 2 walls to hit some murals. I did a mural at Colorado Sake Co. Shout out those guys. That was pretty cool. Did a mural in their back garage door. And we had a great time. It was pretty cool to see a gallery, connect with Forge. He told me some stories about how he used to hang out with Basquiat when he was a little kid. You'd peep in the window, Basquiat's studio. So I was like, wow, that's cool, man. These connections are pretty cool. We talked about doing something in the future, and so now here we are, almost a year later. And Denver's always been real close to my heart. When I was younger, I would go up there a lot. I had some skateboard homies that would just hang around and skateboard out in the mountains and stuff, down in Golden a lot, just downtown Denver. Yeah, so it's cool to kind of come full circle to be in a city that a lot of my early childhood was connected to. And like I said, Denver is a real poignant spot in the West. And a lot of my work is kind of really based on this like transition of cultures and societies of the West, and that's kind of what I'm bringing up there right now. But like a more contextualized look at it in relation to today, you know, like these exoduses of people.
You were born and raised in New Mexico, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, I was born at the Santa Fe Indian Hospital, which is right next to where the Santa Fe boarding school was. And I mean, boarding schools are real big right now, residential schools. So immediately a part of the Department of the Interior of the United States. So they got my footprint somewhere over there, you know, in their archives. I'd like to see that someday.
There you
go.
And you grew up in Albuquerque?
I would say I have a sense of pride, yeah, of growing up in Albuquerque, Porqueño, as we would say. It's a real special place. That's one way to put it. We got a lot of problems, but it's real dear to my heart. Yeah, there's a lot of problems, but there's a lot of just, it's like nowhere else on this earth really. And I've been to a lot of places, and it does definitely feel like home. And there's definitely a lot of culture here that I don't think you really get anywhere else.
I love New Mexico. It's one of my favorite places on the face of the earth. It just, everything about it. So if I could figure out how to make my way down there, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
You're always welcome, man. Yeah.
Open arms to the land of enchantment.
There you go, the land of enchantment. There's a joke, we call it the land of entrapment. Because if you grow up here, you'll go away for a little bit, and then you should always come back. And you don't really know what it is that makes you come back. And I think I always say it's a good home base, because you can live here. Right now, it's changing, but it's always been kind of cheap to live here. So you save on your cost of living, and then you can just fly out and you can travel from here. And I'm lucky that I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little cheaper to live there, huh? I guess, are you starting to see a lot of gentrification in there, or not so much yet?
It's we're in a transition period for sure right now. So the movie industry, I mean, everyone thought like maybe like 10 years ago the movie industry was going to really boom, and then they were kind of just getting everything set up. But with COVID and everything, and a lot of people leaving the big cities of like LA and like even Texas a lot of people are buying up property. Rent prices are starting to hike up a little bit, and certain historical neighborhoods are getting kind of scared, like with development, you know, people buying up property. There's no, like, I'm on the side of the argument of gentrification. I don't really pick either or side, because I just think it's kind of more or less a natural, that's what's going to happen, you know, especially as you look forward into the future. If these cities are going to want to economically develop, you know, and the people that hold the keys to the city, they're wanting to do that because public, you know, pressure. But you want to look at ways to go about it the right way, so that you're not displacing people that have lived in these places, in these communities for very long periods of time. But you also want to like give people something to like be proud of for the future, you know, future development too. So it goes back and forth.
It's a fine line, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's bound to happen. And, you know, like I said, New Mexico has a special place in my heart. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful state. And it's just inevitable. You know, if it's a nice place, people are going to flock there. And then, you know, you're seeing a mass, it seems like a pretty big exodus from California right now, especially from LA. People realize, you know what, we don't have to live here and pay high taxes and some of the other craziness that goes along with it. And you're seeing people move from there pretty quickly. It looks like.
Definitely. We got a lot of Californians moving in, a lot of Texans too. And I mean, along with that brings us mostly because, I mean, we just came out of a crazy year where people realize they don't have to, you know, they don't have to go to their job anymore. They can work from home. So you can live somewhere cheaper, and you can do this, you can do Zoom, you know, and you don't necessarily have to be in an office located there. And yeah, it's definitely changing economically. I just wish that people that moved here, they just took the time to actually get to know the place and just be a little more humble and a little more like when people try to tell them about like the culture that's here, don't just like act like you can just come in here and own the place,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to respect the people that have come before and respect the cultures that in the community. And a lot of times people move in there and they think it's, that they're the ones that's going to make it make a big transition for the city. And it's all about them, where I think you just got to be respectful. And like you said, humble. I think that's a great word to use too.
Humble yourself, realize that like you're coming into a place that's actually kind of more economically lower than what you're used to, and so like if you're going to show up with a bunch of money, how are you going to, you feel great about that you're living someplace cheaper, but like how are you going to actually impact it in a positive way and not just like, oh wow, you bought a house that probably people here, like they try to get a loan and they'll get outbid by people that just can pay straight up cash,
Yeah.
It's like people work their whole lives to get a bank loan, to get the right credit and everything, to get a bank loan for a house. And then all of a sudden someone from California or Texas moves in and they can pay maybe twice or more what the market value of that house is. So if you're coming in and you're doing that, how are you going to impact the community and the neighborhoods around you in a necessarily like a positive way and get to know people, I mean, like a lot of my work, a lot of my activist work kind of goes into that, just like really just trying to working class, because I mean, I grew up poor. I grew up to the son of two artists where we were always just wondering like, well, we gotta, my dad's like, we gotta like do something with the talents, that we're given. And yeah, now I don't know why, but like I was kind of like always. I had at a young age, I was like, man, maybe I should just go be like work hard and like try to find like some office job or something where like it's got a steady paycheck.
You actually had that thought?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I mean, I grew up. I watched my parents grow up struggling, and we never like. But like, I talk about this in a sense where like you have to see that like. There's different privileges, some people have privileges that like are the obvious ones where like you grow up with a monetary privilege, or you grow up where maybe racial privilege. But I've always looked at like, well, what is my privilege? What do I bring to the table that other people don't necessarily have? And I think that is like, I was really nurtured with a sense of freedom, and I was nurtured with a sense of like, you don't have to be stuck in something. And I feel like in today's day and age, people are really like, they want to break free from like having a boss, or they want a sense of purpose to their life, or they want to leave something behind. And I had those since the beginning. Like I never wanted a boss, I always wanted a sense of freedom. I always wanted to be able to go wherever I wanted to go, and that was really important to me. And I figured that out very early on, and I realized that the system in which I lived in didn't want me to have those things. It kind of rewards a sense of compliance, but it also rewards a sense of cheating and gaming the system at the same time. So you kind of have to toe the line with that. And I realized art is kind of a way out, and I've always kind of said with especially like Native people, we're not necessarily gifted. There hasn't been like an NBA superstar that's Native yet, or there hasn't been like a NFL football superstar that's Native yet, And so, but there have been actually a lot of really amazing artists. So like, I think that that's kind of our realm. It's like we could be like these art superstars, and because we have a different, I don't want to say God-given, but like we have this real natural talent to comment on like the history of this nation, society, and using like our artistic talents, our inherent artistic talents in that sense. So, I mean, when I talk to kids younger than me, that's what I really try to instill with them, especially when they look like me or they are similar to me. Like, keep going. I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be Kobe Bryant. I want to be Kobe Bryant straight up. I realized very quickly early on that I was like, I'm only 5'10". I'm not going to be 6'8". Kobe Bryant 6'8". It's not going to happen. So I got to figure something else out. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you could be that, but at 5'10", you better have some mad basketball skills, right?
That's right.
I wish.
In addition to artwork that Native Americans bring, they also bring a sense of patriotism and serving their country. And I think they serve their country in the military at a higher percentage per capita than a lot of the other minorities, or even maybe the majority white people. I don't know. Whether it's the code talkers and everything they did, the Navajo and the Lakota during, World War II and beyond, they bring a pride of their nation to serve in the military. So I think that's cool.
That's a good statistic to bring up. Actually, a lot of people don't know that. I'm glad you brought that up. That's true. I have multiple family members who have served in the military. Someday I will make this film, but I have a film that's really very much about that. And I think it's mostly because, like, in every American indigenous culture, I would say we really nurture a warrior society. There's always a warrior society. And so it's kind of something that we have always clung on to, even with the assimilation and like the genocide of disbanding our culture. We've always still very clung on to like this warrior society, this warrior spirit. And when that turned into like serving your country as like a nation, like in my script, there's this conflict between these two brothers where like one is he's talking about how why would you go serve a country that hasn't given us anything, it's taken so much away from us. But at the same time, there's that draw to be this warrior and to represent your people on a battlefield, or it ends up turning out that he's actually a medic. And there's a real poignant scene in the film where he actually saves a bunch of people. So, it's not always about like this violence and this combative thing. It's about like representing yourself and representing all your ancestors and your warrior spirits that come all from behind you. And I'm glad you brought that statistic up. A lot of people don't realize that, but like you go to any reservation, there's a very high population of veterans. It also just really pains me to see that like of the veteran population that's homeless, a vast majority of them are Native too. And that goes like deeper into like, we got a very high, this nation's got a very high population of veteran homeless people that most of the time are just really suffering from like PTSD symptoms, mental health symptoms that are related to war. And it's kind of disgusting that we are a nation that doesn't really take care of our patriots, our veterans, people that served their country. And that's like a conversation that's as old as time, but nothing's really being done about it either. I don't know what we're supposed to do, but the conversation is an ongoing one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a complicated issue for sure. On the surface, it's pretty simple. It's like somebody goes and serves and fights and has PTSD or any other kind of disability, or even, give them the benefits. That's why we have the VA, but they don't support the VA like they should probably. And it's a shame. And, and then I think the Native population also suffers from homelessness across the board that a lot of minorities do not, as far as percentage wise. So it's really like they get it from both sides.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's so sad about that mostly is because I've always thought about what would keep me from being homeless. And it always comes down to community and a sense of family. Because, if you go to the pueblo, you go to the village, it's kind of almost possible to be homeless there if you keep in good standing with your community. So when you see someone that's homeless, that means that's someone that's lost all sense ties of family, ties of community, and
their identity, right?
That too, I've spoken with like homeless natives on the street all the time, and I would say they have an overwhelming sense of pride in their identity, even more so. Because I feel like on the streets it gets turned even more racialized, that people would realize, like, you'll see homeless people, they'll click up with their race right away, just as a sense of survival, and that's why you'll have like whole, for lack of a better term, you'll have whole tribes that get formed out of like different tribes of homeless people, and they're from all over the country. Like in Albuquerque, we have a very big homeless population, and when you speak with them, you'll see that a lot of them actually got put on a bus, either from California. They get put on buses from all over the place, and every now and then I'll be walking down the street and I'll hear my language being spoken, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're from Giwa, you're speaking Giwa. And I'm like, man, what happened that you lost your sense of community? What happened that you lost your ties, your family ties? That kind of goes into more what's like about my painting work is just trying to survive within the system of capitalism. My homeboy Mark Fisher, he writes about the schizophrenic within capitalism, and I think that's really where a lot of that homelessness comes from. It's just people that have really just checked out. They don't want to be a part of it anymore, part of the system anymore. And so that's, they'll exhibit symptoms of schizophrenia. And these are like symptoms that probably didn't have this outward violence or this outward negativity back in the day before the system was like all of a sudden it arrived,
I really appreciate the fact that you said a lot of homelessness have a sense of a separation from their community, because I don't know if I've really thought of it that way. And so I really appreciate the fact that you brought that forward, because I think you're right on. That is probably the biggest thing, is they have a disconnect from their tribe, their community, their family, and it causes them to seek, I guess, I don't know if seek is the right word, but causes them to just get lost in the system. And I appreciate the fact that you brought that, because it gives me something to think about in a different way.
Yeah. Well, you got to kind of put it onto your individual self. So like, what's keeping you? I mean, do we really want to be doing this our whole lives? Do we really want to be like paying? I saw a meme the other day. It's like, it's this dude talking to a monkey. And he's like, "You're a dumb creature. Look how primitive you are." And then the monkey says, "You're the only creature on Earth that pays to live on Earth." Like,
right.
That's crazy, man. So like, honestly, if you just think about that your whole life, you're like, man, I'm really paying to be here right now. And I'm like working and expending my energy and giving my time to pay to live here. When like before all of this that we see now, we were just living, we were just living on this earth, and we were nurturing it and we were taking care of it. And there's like this disconnect now where it's like, it's so driven by, you have to make a profit, and you got to be comfortable, and you got to have the air conditioning, and you got to have all these, like, you got to have the nice car, you got to have all these conveniences in life. And we're all guilty of it. No one's even above it. I always say, like, you actually can't get away from it unless you go stand like literally naked in a field and just start eating the berries off the ground. But no one's going to do that, Definitely not,
Right.
If you really start to think about that, like, man, I'm paying to be here right now. And I can see how people just like, they kind of lose their mind. They're like, they don't want to partake in that anymore. And then you have to really think about your individual self. Like, what is really keeping me from doing that? And there's a lot of social constructs and a lot of stuff we cling to as like conveniences. And we just really want to be comfortable. We're creatures of comfort,
And we bought into the idea of possession and owning things that you really can't possess or own forever. It's always a temporary state, but we bought into that whole argument all along,
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get away from it. Like you said, you can't get away from it.
I think that's why I think nurturing community is so important, because if you truly have a community that takes care of you, and you realize that if a community is taking care of me, that means I'm taking care of my community. Because my neighbor needs salt, I will give them salt. It's just like they would give me salt. But society has progressed so differently that no one even talks to their neighbors anymore. We're all living right next to each other, and it's just like that's their problems. You see your neighbor getting evicted across the street. What are you going to do? Be like, oh, I feel bad for them. I'm glad it's not me.
Right.
And I think like a real community would like step up and like, well, what can we do to not make these things happen? And a lot of it's just like diffusion of responsibility too, because we're all just like, well, there's programs for that, there's programs for this, and you feel good if you donate some money to it every now and then. Gurdjieff talks about this as the fourth way. Like how can I, as an individual, impact upon it, and how can I go through a way of like some form of suffering, but also in some way that I'm trying to make myself better for the community. Because if I'm not making myself as an individual better for the community, I'm not helping anybody, and you kind of have to start with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, I didn't realize I was gonna get all deep like real quick. I thought we were gonna be all funny for. We can talk about some absurd shit too. You
really hit the nail on the head. I mean, it is really about community and fostering community. And if we're going to get ourselves out of this kind of mess that we're in, we're going to have to start working together, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out how to, not only help each other and facilitate things, but how to get along. Just get along, and that's a huge problem in this day and age. I mean, I guess it's been going on since the beginning of time, but in the last, especially in the last 4 years, there's been a huge divide amongst people and people's attitudes these days. So you got to cultivate that. I think it's really important to just, you kind of spoke to it, just go out of your way and be kind to people and be empathetic and compassionate,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when people talk about compassion and empathy, we immediately think of like having compassion and empathy for people that have less than us, where it's also like you got to be in the same way compassion and empathy for people that have more than you, and you might even be envious of what they have, or you might even be jealous of what they have. And instead try to turn that around and be like, I have compassion and empathy for those people. Like, I mean, you could talk about like the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks of the world forever, but honestly, you should, like, I feel bad for them. I feel bad that like they don't have this compassion and empathy themselves for like the masses. I mean, like we're all trying to get to Mars, but you could be wiping out world hunger with the amount of money you're trying to get to Mars. You could be providing cures for cancer, cures for all these things, but you're trying to get to Mars because there's some ego there. Like, what are you trying to do to take care of the world that you're living on? You're trying to escape it. That's
it doesn't make sense, right? It's like you have all this money and you could throw all this money at the problems that we have here instead of like escaping to another planet because, okay, this place is done. We're out of here.
Yeah. And I think like money after a certain point actually just represents power. And it just represents a certain amount of like pull that you have with things. And I mean, even in like kind of going into a little bit of my philosophy and even like selling my work, I unapologetically ask for prices where I think like, yeah, no, this is what I think it's worth to me, the amount of energy that I'm expending and giving to the world and what I want to get back so that I can do the things that I want to do to help as much people as I can and people that are close to me, surrounding me. And that's why, I mean, I have a lot of respect for artists that maybe sell their work like I don't want to say cheaper, but like a more like available to people. But to me, like my work is priced at that sense. I'm like, I'm trying to get back not just for me, but for like all the people behind me, and like if there's people out there that are making like millions of dollars off of work that I feel like isn't really saying anything, like I'm trying to say something. So I feel like you got to pay a premium, and if someone's going to connect with it, I mean, that money doesn't go into like Louis Vuitton or like yachts or like, jumping out of helicopters. That goes into like me actively helping my community. So, yeah, I mean, like that's those reparations that like we were promised, like, forever. So yeah, I see it that way. Money is power, and it allows you to do the things and make the things happen that you want to see in the world, and that's really important to me.
Yeah.
So you're not anti-money by any stretch of the imagination.
No. I mean, well, okay. I am anti-money. So like, this is, people are always like, you talk like a communist. And I'm like, well, like I read a lot of critiques of capitalism. And I don't think communism failed. So we got to figure out some other way to break through the ether of what's happening right now. And so all we got to do is really critique the system in which is the predominant system in the world. And so I've always been like, you got to really game the system, So you got to look away. You got to look at ways of like, well, let's go in through the back door, And I feel like communism sometimes as the direct answer to capitalism, direct answer of like anti-money, anti-this is like, that's never, we've tried that. We tried that for like, since it failed. It failed miserably. So we have to figure out what's the way to game the system, go into the back door, use the tools in which they use to oppress people and use it to build up people, I feel like that's a little bit, it's sneaky. I mean, that's my coyote energy, my trickster energy. So like, I think that's important, and just as long as you don't lose yourself in it, because there's a lot of people that try and they don't necessarily, they set out with good intentions and then they don't follow through on it. So that's where that comes back to as the individual. You gotta really nurture yourself, that you're not losing yourself and remain on that good path,
Yeah. How do you nurture yourself?
Ooh, I mean, man, I wish I could say right now that I was on that real good path of like really nurturing myself. I probably strayed away, not straight away from it, but I'm trying to really navigate being an artist right now, and some of that comes with a little bit of like, I always looked up to like rock stars and stuff, and I always look at like the real like fuck you kind of like stories. I'm like, yeah, I really identify with some of that energy. But also, like how I nurture myself is just really kind of relying upon teachings and practices of, I don't know, I guess you would call it spirituality. There's not really anything you can really, it's just connection, connection to another realm. It's hard to label things, there's a lot of native wisdom, I would say, that kind of gets co-opted. There's all kinds of quotes all over the place that people use, and they're great quotes. But eventually, in this day and age, in this hyperreality, quotes just become a meme and just becomes lost in the, there's inspirational quotes everywhere. We got inspirational cat posters everywhere, So, like, what are you going to actually do to, like, break away from those like cliche things? And like, you got to do a lot of research. You got to do the knowledge and the working. You got to go and listen to a lot of long-winded elders. My dad, that's the number one thing he taught me, and I think that's kind of what I'm always putting into the world, because my dad always just, his number one thing, if he was going to leave any kind of legacy, would be learning how to listen. And a lot of people don't really necessarily know how to listen. People know how to like pay attention maybe, or people know how to hear, but when you listen is when you've actually heard a story over and over and over again, and you learn something new every time. That's true listening. And so that's where a lot of my nurturement is, and a lot of that's built through patience, a lot of that's built through putting into practice what I've listened to. And that's his legacy. That's what I would keep around. My dad's a very special person on this earth. Yeah, I definitely want to take that and present that to the world to carry his legacy on with that, for sure.
I like that.
Awesome. Yeah.
I like that you spoke to patience, because that's something I don't think a lot of people, having an in-depth conversation and making a connection with somebody, that takes patience, right? That's an investment of time. And in this world of go, 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 go all the time, a lot of people don't take that time. You spoke to, the fact that most people don't even know who their neighbors are or anything about them, or maybe don't even know their names, right? Um, I think that's something that's been lost. I think maybe the pandemic has brought some of that back. Hopefully we learn something from this last year and a half, and we take the time to engage with other people, and we take the time to have that patience, and engage with people.
I hope so. I mean, there was like a moment in 2020 where it did kind of feel like we all were like going through the same thing, and there was kind of almost like a point where everyone was like, let's all like give each other a break, let's all like not be doing the same thing. We all had a chance, and it felt good. And then I don't know, all the George Floyd stuff happened, and then it was like a real big eruption of different viewpoints, talking points. And if you paid attention to all the media, then you got real lost in it too. And there was a lot of division, and then it was an election year at the same time. So like even more division. And now that we've come out of that, and like we're here in July 2021, it kind of, to me, I mean, I'm a little bit of a cynic. I would kind of say that we're actually really even more divided than we were, and we kind of missed our opportunity to, in that year anyway, to really come together and realize, like our own real common enemy is the ones at the top, the ones that oppress us. And right now, it's like we're all just kind of infighting again, and that's kind of like divide and conquer. That's what the top wants, that's what they want us to be talking about, these points of things that like are real personal to our own identities and stuff. And I try to like listen. I try to hear people out, and I appreciate them, and I listen to them, and I see where they're coming from in some things that like really hit deep within their identity. But like, honestly, as an individual, I think you should try to like more or less get past your own personal feelings and look at it like as a collective whole. Like, how do we really come together succinctly, as one human race? That's more important. And like, if you don't really get there until we get all past our own personal differences, and that's on the extreme right to the extreme left and everything in between. Like, you gotta get past all that. So yeah, and I mean, like that's kind of more or less what like a lot of my painting in 2020 was about. There was like a lot of this like fragmented viewpoints, fragmented people, just melding together and like different elements. And like I use a lot of primary colors because there's I took that from one of my mentors. This painting right behind me, actually, Rocky Norton, he always talks about the primary self. And so you have those three colors, the red, blue, and yellow, represented as the primary self. And so like melding these primary selves together, and seeing like there's these different fragmented viewpoints, extreme opposites being brought together, and just more or less put into a composition that can be beautiful but also terrifying at the same time. Yeah.
Jesse, how long have you been painting?
So, I mean, like I said, grew up in a house of artists. My dad was a painter. Just real brief backstory on him. He went to Oakland City College, but he was the first class at the Institute of American Indian Arts, which is actually a former boarding school. That's actually just kind of cool. He had an exhibition in Denver. That was his last exhibition, actually, before he got kicked out of the Institute of American Indian Arts because his hair was too long. Now, could you imagine that in 2021?
Wow.
They wanted to kick him out because his hair was too long. They wanted to cut his hair, and he was going through, this is in the 1970s, he was going through a period of his reclamation of his identity. And I don't know, you can't see it right now, but my hair is probably just about as long as his was. And just brief story, they wanted him to cut his hair because they wanted everyone, these top artists that they were going to have in the show, they wanted them to be presentable down at the country club in Santa Fe. And there's strict dress code, so he couldn't have long hair with the dress code. So he has actually a very big collection of work that they still actually own at the Institute of American Indian Arts that I've seen. And he was the first class there. He was actually older than a lot of the students because he was kind of already an established artist out in the Bay Area. And so when they formed the Institute, they brought in a couple of artists, native artists who were already making art. What kind of the Institute turned into around that period of time was they were kind of really trying to get everyone to paint the same, because it was almost like a money making scheme where they're like, okay, there's a lot of money going through Santa Fe right now. Santa Fe is actually the third largest art market in the United States. So much money goes through in and out of Canyon Road and the plaza still to this day. But back then it was just starting to boom. So like a lot of these people saw like, this is people are going to be buying Native American art. And so a lot of the teachers at that time were kind of brought in like these younger students, maybe a little bit younger than me, kind of almost out of high school, and we're teaching them how to paint a certain way. My dad, if you look at some of his work from back then, really rebelled against a lot of that. He was painting like, he was like looking up to a lot of the old masters like Pablo Picasso, Juan Miro. And so a lot of people hadn't seen stuff like that, these really more avant-garde, bright colors, and just like he was messing around and stuff with like pottery, and what was the idea of like sculpture and stuff. Like if you see some of the work, you'd be like, you couldn't even tell that it was Native American art from that period of time. It was very contemporary. It wasn't necessarily what's been kind of grown to be known as the kitsch Native American Southwestern art of today. I almost got in an argument with with some lady the other night because she was just like, oh, I don't like Southwestern art. And so I was like, oh, that kind of, I let myself maybe get a little personally offended, but like, but I mean, like, cause like Southwestern art, like I don't like Southwestern art necessarily. That's why I've always respected my dad. Long story short, my first time painting was in my dad's studio when I was a little kid, messing around with his really expensive oil paints. If I had a kid, I don't know if I would necessarily let him do that. Nah, I probably would. So that nurturement of like a young, like you're never ever going to regain your full child self in your creativity, but you can try to hold on to it as much as you can. And so that's what I've always been my philosophy. So I went to art school. I had I actually had a group exhibition with my dad back in 2012. About at that same time, I was in film school, so kind of took a little bit of a break. Went to film school. I felt like film was at that time was the medium in which I wanted to be able to tell stories. I still think it's actually one of the best mediums to tell a story. Maybe other than music, where music is so ethereal that like you just feel that. But a film really combines like all the mediums of art into one thing to tell a story. I did that up until about 2017, trying to nurture that film career. I got real burnt out with like the corporate side of that, and the whole time I was painting, drawing, but just stuff that I was more or less like. I still look at it like sketches, like a notebook. And so like right around 2017, I decided I'm like, well, like I have all these like small paintings and I have all these sketchbooks. And I'm like, I'm just going to put these sketchbooks and these ideas and these notes and these just opinions onto bigger canvases. And I always knew a lot about art history at that point in time. And so I knew that like the number one thing that it's kind of, I do a little bit of a commentary on this. Like the number one thing that the Americans gave to the art world was scale and size. And so my commentary on that is like, well, if the Americans gave scale and size to the world, to the art world, like what does it mean if an indigenous artist gives scale and size to the art world? So like, I looked at it as got a little bit of a rebellion against trying to sell art, because if you're generally, I mean, there's some people that I really look up to probably have the same mindset as me, like Randy Boogie, or shout out Randy Boogie. Scale, because no one's going to buy a big painting to put in their house because they only got a certain amount of wall space. But someone will put like a small painting in their house because they got a wall space to fit there. And I always thought that was a little like putting yourself, holding yourself back. And so I looked at it as like scale. It's bold. It's like it's a statement. Even like murals and stuff like. That's like so related to our culture and our heritage, and not just like going all the way back to where my dad was at IIA. They were trying to make stuff that was sellable, saleable to people and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm gonna put all these opinions, I'm gonna put all these thoughts, I'm gonna put all these scratches, all these things. I'm gonna put on big canvases, and at that point, it commands presence, which is very important to me. Like a painting could look like it was done by a 3-year-old, but if like that 3-year-old painting is like a huge like 12 by 12 canvas, that's a beautiful piece of art right there. So I think about that a lot.
It's undeniable, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you about scale. So that makes sense. Exactly what you just explained. And you live in a place, we live in the Southwest. So we come from a place, and we live in a place where there's these wide open spaces. So it makes sense that, that you work with these large canvases, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the number one thing I always think about when I go away from New Mexico is like, oh my gosh, the sky is so small everywhere else you go, pretty much. Or just the Southwest in general, the sky is always encompassing. When I went down to the South a couple of years ago, I was like, man, trees are all like on top of me, and there's only this like sliver of like sky and stuff. That definitely has a lot to do with my outlook, for sure.
You kind of hit on it a little bit earlier on, but describe what you do and describe what your mission is as far as what you're trying to address with your art.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it would be hard to say like a singular thing. I think a lot of it is I'm really just trying to put my personal self into it, and my voice just really come across. And sometimes it's commentary on social structures or commentary on the world in which I interact with every day. And then sometimes it's just maybe me personally, just like being human, and relationships are really big and important, interpersonal relationships. So I'll joke, some people come by and they look at my work and be like, I really like this. Like, I feel like some kind of passion in it. I'm like, well, yeah, that's obviously about a woman or like about some like relationship. So, but I don't necessarily say that, but I think that in my head, I'm like, oh, okay. So like tapping into that energy necessarily where we feel these like very personal, like human emotions that kind of like relates itself to a universal like human connection. And then you can grab people with that and then maybe sneak in some like, oh yeah, by the way, like Amazon sucks, or something like, like I think that's kind of interesting to play with that. And then, I mean, a lot of like the aesthetics of my work is just like, I'm 29. So like I grew up right when Y2K was happening. And then after that was 9/11, and then like the birth of like when the internet really took off, when YouTube was like in the early stages of YouTube. And so like in Google, and to me, that's like my age period and my age range of people. That's a real interesting thing to grow up in, because back in the day, if you wanted to be a painter, you had to either go buy a bunch of art books or you had to go to museums to look at art and to be inspired by it. Whereas I grew up where like the world is my oyster. I just had to search things on Google and then find things I was connected with. And then I even look at like kids that are younger than me, and I ask them like, well, what is this inspired by? And they'll usually always say like, well, I saw something on Instagram or I saw something on Tumblr, And so that's interesting to me. And you can be kind of dismissive about that and maybe kind of more or less pretentious about it. Like, well, you didn't go to art school or you didn't learn. I'm like, I mean, kind of like we're in a stage where you don't necessarily need to go to art school anymore. You need to seek out people who know about something maybe more or less than you, but like to view art nowadays, it's really on you. You can search whatever you want. You can find what you connect with at any point in time. And yeah, I mean, like a lot of my influences come from that. Growing up in the age of the internet, commenting on like the internet, like memes are art because like, anything that touches you is art. If a meme makes you feel some kind of, it makes you laugh, a painting will make you laugh, but like you got to go to a museum or you got to go to a gallery and you look at that piece of art and it makes you laugh. You can look on your phone and find a meme that makes you laugh or makes you cry or something like that. So the way in which we interact with creation and design and art is just everywhere abundant around us. And in that, I think it's really important as someone that creates things, which I hold very high responsibility. It's like important, like, well, how am I going to differentiate myself between just so much content out there, and how am I going to differentiate what I'm saying? And that's why, I mean, like I tell people, they'll ask me like, or people will discuss, they'll be like, well, what do you think about this technique? Do you think I'm getting better in this, and I'm kind of the opinion of like technique and craft is in this day and age has kind of somewhat been over eclipsed by what are you saying is more important than if you can paint a perfect circle or if you can do, the craft as much. Because, the best artists for me are always going to be kids, where it's like, damn, I didn't realize this child's perspective is so much different than mine. But the execution might not be there. So like the execution should be secondary. And you're always going to learn that. So like for me, my art's always just about nurturing, trying to have a differing opinion, not trying to be the same, as like what other people are trying to say, and then so the craft comes second in that.
Do you work primarily in oil paints or what's your medium of choice?
So like as of right now, my aesthetics, a lot of spray paint. My process is really informed by how quickly I can work. Van Gogh, that's actually, I think I mean, Van Gogh left a lot of things behind, but the number one thing I think Van Gogh was really trying to say was that a painting was supposed to be done in one act. A painting should be an expression of a moment in time. And if you like work on a painting longer than like, I don't know, whatever it takes to finish it, that's why he did a lot of landscapes. He'd go out, it was all about that process. I like the process of being a very performative act, and a painting might not be complete. I saw somewhere like yesterday, it said like a painting is never really finished, it's just abandoned. So that means you leave it at a certain point. So yeah, I use mediums that like graffiti culture, like spray paint for sure, markers that you might use for quick little tags, and oil sticks, which Basquiat and Picasso used predominantly. The oil stick is like that's a really cool. I like oil sticks a lot. And then oil paints, sometimes, like oil paints, that's a longer process for me because when you use oil, it like takes a while to dry. And so like I'll use oils occasionally when I'm just going to put it over the top of something. But like house paint, there's definitely a commentary on consumer culture within my work. I think for a long time I was like saying this painting wasn't ethically sourced. So just kind of commentary on like, yeah, we're artists and we're like to think we're all high and mighty and we're helping out the community and we're helping the world and all this stuff. Like, but we're using materials that are like really highly toxic and bad for the environment. And so my art store has always mostly been a Lowe's home improvement. So there's definitely some kind of irony and commentary on consumer culture with that. Mostly also too because like when I first started wanting to paint big, I was like, all right, well, I gotta pay my rent, but like also I gotta paint big, and I'm like I can't be stretching big old giant canvases because that's going to be expensive too. So like I would try to find the cheapest way. And my dad, I would definitely say my dad told me that. It's like, well, you can always paint on masonite, and masonite's one of the cheapest surfaces you can buy at a home improvement store at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's actually what Jackson Pollock, all his paintings, a lot of his paintings were painted on masonite. It's a very cheap material. It's archival. It's probably not like the greatest, but I have like a whole set of opinions on like archival stuff. I'm like, well, if Jackson Pollock can paint on masonite, why can't I paint on masonite?
Right.
Yeah.
Does house paint work pretty good for painting, especially what you want to paint on, masonite and stuff like that?
So like the thing with house paint too was like one of my mentors behind me here, Rocky Norton, he used a lot of house paint. Because you go to the oops shelf, and I don't do this as much anymore. Honestly, probably because I'm too lazy to do it. But you can actually, you go to Lowe's, you'll have them make up a color that you want. Then you take it home. You go back the next day, and he's like, "Oh, it's the wrong color," or like, "It's not good." Then they'll take it back, and then they'll put it on the oops paint shelf. And then if you get there at the right time in the morning, I would have my friends go in and they'll buy it, and you get a discounted price. So instead of buying it at like, I think, what is it, like maybe like $25 for a gallon bucket, you'll get it for $9. And so like back in the day, I used to do that a lot, or I would just like go through and look through the oops paint and those were the colors I would choose. And I would force myself to like choose colors that like they were going to paint their walls of their home with, and they decided to bring it back. So, and that made me actually explore a lot of different types of house paint too. Because a lot of people think like there's like just to the extent like a lot of house paint kind of does look the same. It's I use an art term here. The viscosity of it is very runny, very wet. One of my people I really look up to, Mark Rothko, he famously used house paint. He would use house paint, and then when he actually started getting a little bit more of gallery representation, they would come in, and one of the curators or the gallery representatives would come in and be like, "Here, we bought you all this really expensive oil paint." They came back the next day, and all that stuff was in the trash. And he went back and he just went to the home improvement store and he's like, "Why would you give me materials that I don't use to make my stuff?" So yeah. So I mean, like I'm an art nerd. I know like a lot of like art history, and that relates into like the materials that painters use and stuff. So yeah. But the viscosity, it dries really quick. It's cheap. It's you can mix colors and get a lot of weird results. And there's also using like rollers. I use a lot of rollers in my work. Yeah, definitely. It's fun. At the time of this interview, I haven't painted in like 5 days, and it's kind of like you guys got me a little bit like, I gotta
ready to go hit the canvas, huh? Or the masonite.
Yeah.
Your paintings all look like they're really layered. Is that how you typically work? Layer upon layer?
Yeah. People like probably don't believe this, but none of my paintings, like, well, I wouldn't say none, but majority of them are not preconceived. Like I don't start off with a blank white canvas and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put this is gonna be like one of my bull paintings. I'm like, this is gonna be a bull, or like this is gonna be one of my characters. A lot of times I build up a lot of layers, so it has like this texture to it, but also again, like behind me talks about like I like knowing that there's like many different incarnations of ideas and stuff that's formed underneath there, you know, and maybe I just leave a little section of it, just a little section, a little hint of it that's, you know, there. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of layers involved with it, and sometimes the final layer might just be like, looks like it's all one layer, but I know that there's so many other things, so many other emotions, so many other attachments to this physical object when you put it onto like a wall, it's become that physical piece that's on that wall. And I don't know, that's kind of what I take along with me that I actually do keep sacred to myself. because I told myself, my dad actually told me, he's like, like when you give something away, when like if you sell a piece of work and someone puts it up in their house, like you've given it away and you kind of have to divorce yourself from it. But he's like, you know what? You can always go back into their house and you can change things. so, so like I haven't done that yet, and my dad has done that. But I think about that, because people are like, do you ever get attached to anything that you ever make? And I'm like, no, you divorce yourself from it. And once you've given it away, it's out into the world, into the ether. But also, like, those layers, there were all different points of my life where I was feeling something or something was going on in the world. It's like a timestamp, it's kind of cool. That's one cool thing about painting. That's dope for sure. I love that.
Yeah.
So your dad, how does he go about it when he's done this? Does he just show up at somebody's house and say, with a bunch of materials, and say, hey, I was just thinking about that piece. I think I want to do something else to it. How does that work?
I mean, I've seen him on 2 separate occasions. And if he listens to this, he might be like, I don't think I remember doing it like that. Or my mom would actually be the more big stickler. She's like, no, that wasn't. But my memory is I've seen him in like a small painting in someone's house, and they were all talking about it. And he was like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to change this. And he like literally has walked up and he like has a marker, or like they got something, or like a crayon or something, and he'll add something to it. And I like that. I don't know why. I mean, that's like, I've heard of actually Basquiat doing stuff like that too. I like that because it goes back to like ownership, and we were talking about ownership of the land. We were talking about ownership of things. And it's like, people think like, well, that's real brash and that's real like egotistical just to go up there. I'm like, no, I mean, I think it's more ownership of things are always changing and ever evolving, and I think that those pieces probably are, if you want to put a monetary value on it, it's like probably worth more, or, cause it goes into provenance, it goes into, well, that's a story. There's a story attached to this thing that's not just like, it's not just sitting there collecting dust, like even with like what Banksy did with when he auctioned that piece off and he shredded it, I think that's a long concept in art that like he was just commenting on. I think that's what that is. Even with statues, right? So like if your statue, like when they were doing like even like some of the Venuses or some of like those statues that like are all broken and stuff, those were accidents, and it made it into a whole nother thing. Yeah, so I think that's cool. I like that. I mean, that's what makes it art. That's what makes it living, not just like it's a finished thing. It lives here. It's done, I haven't done it yet to anyone's piece. I don't know if I will, but I'm not above it or below it either.
Right.
I think that's great, man. And I like how you spoke to the provenance of it and the story, because I definitely feel that. I purchased a piece of art recently, and the guy, when I went to go pick it up, the artist was like, did I paint the sides of the piece? And I'm like, I don't know, because he had it all wrapped up. Mm-hmm. And so he took it out of the wrapping and stuff and looked at it. I'm like, I don't even care, man. Like, that's the way you painted it. Like, I just want it the way it was. I like the piece the way it was. I mean, if you really wanted to take it back home and paint the sides, that's fine. But, that's what you did to it. So I'm happy with it. And maybe he'll come over someday and decide that he wants to add something to that piece. I don't know. I'll be like, all right, do it. Go for it.
That's cool. There you go. I love hearing that. Yeah, I like hearing that. You're a good art collector then.
I just need more money.
Exactly.
And more wall space.
Yeah, that's
the two things I'm lacking: a ton of money to buy all the art that I'd like to buy, and enough art space, wall space in my house. New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenet podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening.
So I see a lot of influences. In fact, you mentioned Mark Rothko, and I was looking at a piece that definitely has an influence. I see modernism in your work and a lot of expressionism. Can you speak to that at all? Like, is it just like you see something and you just want to explore that, or what?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like I grew up in the internet, so like everything's available for me to see. So, and man, I also like took art history in college, took a lot of art history classes in college. So, like in art, the aesthetics is initially what draws you in, you know. And so, like there's just something aesthetically pleasing about something that you're just like, oh, I feel connected with this. And then you start to explore, well, like, what does it make you feel? And I think Mark Rothko was like one of probably him and Cy Twombly. Cy Twombly's another big influence. They really explored a lot of that in their abstract expressionism at the time. When I see something, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go explore this, but I want to more or less put myself in their shoes of what they were thinking. But they lived in a different period of time as me. So like they're dead, you know. I have this joke about like, it's a bad joke too, because obviously it's not like completely true, but like I only collaborate with dead artists. But
I like that.
But it's funny though, because it's like, I mean, yeah, I am drawn to like, all right, they're not here anymore, so like, you know, and like, you know, Rothko committed suicide. I mean, Basquiat, like he had a tragic death, you know, and Keith Haring had a tragic death. Andy Warhol had a tragic death. So it's like, I do like to think about like, well, if they were still here, what would they be doing? Would they just kind of faded away? Would they still be doing the same thing? Would they be exploring things? So like, I kind of like taking some of these artists that maybe died ahead of when like they got to explore other stuff. So like, I'll take some of maybe something that some of their aesthetics and be like, what happened if me and Picasso and Rothko all collaborated on a project? That's kind of interesting, you know? And I think that's what keeps art interesting to people, keeps exploration important. And like, I mean, there's obvious comparisons, you know, there's a lot of people are doing the Basquiat thing right now. A lot of this abstract expressionism, a lot of people are doing like the Keith Haring right now. And I got no problem with that, because like at the turn of the century, those were the dudes, you know, those were the dudes that were like making really important commentary on work and stuff. So like, of course we're still exploring a lot of that. Where I think I'm maybe differentiating myself is like, I'm really delving into, for not so much anymore, but I delved into metamodernism. And that just kind of like goes into like exploring modernism in a meta way of like the internet, thinking a lot about philosophers and theorists in the past that like predicted a lot of stuff that's happening now. So Jean Baudrillard, talking about like simulation theory and stuff like that. Mark Fisher talking about capitalism, schizophrenic stuff within capitalism, some Zizek stuff, and Lacan. So like a lot of these like old philosophers, like classical kind of stuff. But the aesthetics are very important, because that's what initially captures someone's eye. So like if you're using imagery that people are familiar with, like, you know, people know when they see a Picasso, right? People know when they see a Rothko. People know when they see a Twombly. People know when they see a Basquiat. And so if you can initially catch that, and some people might just write you off as like, oh, they're just, you know, copying this. But I like try to like take a step further and be like, well, you know, this initial aesthetic was already built here, you know, and they did the work to make these aesthetically pleasing or aesthetically exciting things that draw the viewer's eye in. And how can I co-opt that and use that to say what I want to say, you know, and say something different and have a commentary on it. And I mean, like that goes into like even hip hop culture, like DJ culture, like graffiti culture. You're always sampling from somewhere, you know. And I feel like that, to me personally, that's more exciting than trying to like beat yourself over the head and like really freaking hurt yourself as an artist. Was like, I need to make something so original, you know. I feel like that's why a lot of people probably quit painting and quit art, because they realize like, oh man, I'm never gonna make something. Someone's already done it before me. And I kind of more or less just embrace it. I'm like, yes, someone has done something probably similar to me in the past, and I'd rather just be like, all right, I'm aware of that. And so what am I going to say? What's my voice going to be unique in that sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're speaking to that, because there's always interest in art appropriation and cultural appropriation. In fact, I was reading an article about Amanda PL, who got canceled because she went and studied Canadian Indigenous art and then started incorporating in her own art. And she was having a show in Toronto, and they ended up canceling her because the Indigenous people thought she was too on the nose of what she was painting. And so it's kind of interesting. So what's your take on, let's say, art appropriation? Obviously you borrow from Picasso, you borrow from Rothko. You kind of address that, but how about cultural stuff that is maybe more in tune with the Native American community, but then there's white people, you know, not necessarily painting exactly, but borrowing from it? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think there's no real definite answer in that. Like, is it wrong or is it right? And I think you kind of, Kanye West's Yeezus tour, he had a lot of merch that came out, and he used the art of a painter called Wes Lang. I like Wes Lang's work, and I think he's actually had some big shows in Denver in the past, and since has some shows in Washington D.C. He's a white male artist, but he's used a lot of Western iconography, and like on the Kanye tour, he used a lot of. I actually own one of the shirts. He's got a Chief shirt, you know, and he made his career off of like these kind of imagery. Now I could stand here and I could be honestly in solidarity with people like, well, you can't take this imagery, you can't take this iconography that's a part of our identity and our culture and make money off of it and exploit it and become real famous off of it. And I can stand here and I can agree with that. But also at the same time, I'm a thief as well. You know, I mean, what do I take from like all kinds of cultures, you know, everywhere? And what do I try to get away with, you know? And a lot of art is that. It's what can you test the boundaries of what you can get away with. And now, like, in today's day and age, people are going to cancel you over that, and you're not going to get away with it as easy. So I would say be better, do better. Like, go into the craft. If it's so easy for you to make these things and for you to appropriate things, and then people are going to come cancel you after it, that means you're not trying hard enough and you're not doing better in actually taking the influence and making it your own. So if you had to know, like, whoever, I don't remember the artist. Amanda PL. So if I was to talk to her, I was like, wow, that's dope. I'm glad you are getting, you took the initiative to, because art's always like, well, I could do that. Everyone always says that. Like when they see something like, I could do that. So like, but artists are like painters especially, or artists, they're like, they go and do that. They go and do it. All right. So, but if you want to have respect, not only for yourself, but from other artists, go do it and make it your own and do it better or do it differently. So that would be my thing. Is like, it's easy to copy and paste. I mean, because you just took the initiative to copy and paste it, you know. That's what I would say. And that would be my more or less opinion on like appropriation and stuff. Because like I don't know how people like could necessarily, like, especially indigenous people, we can't necessarily, like, how are you going to copyright? I use crosses. I use crosses in my work a lot. And that's just like a universal symbol all around the world, right, you know, right. And there's that's represented in so many different cultures. And it means so many different things. And that's why I kind of use it, because it's a very human symbol. And it makes you think about, like, well, this could represent like religion, but also like it means so much things to so many different people. And so that's more or less that commentary on that.
Well, and I think that goes to the question, like, use a cross, and you're already kind of going back to what you talked about before, is you make that initial connection, and that cross might be the initial connection to that patron. And then they get to explore the rest of your piece. What you just said, I think, was a really good description of why, like you said, it's one thing to copy, but then, okay, so you've mastered the Rothko imitation. Now, what are you going to do to make it better? What are you going to do to make it different? And what's it going to say about you? And I thought that was a great way to approach that whole subject. So thank you for sharing with that, because I'm always interested in those kind of cultural and artistic appropriation kind of stuff, because I'm always wondering what people are thinking and how they react to when people do that. So thank you for sharing. I thought that was really poignant.
Of course. I mean, like I said too, it's like if you're going to be an artist, I think that's the first thing you should start out with. Like, what can I get away with? I mean, that's maybe what I think about. I think about that all the time. Like, what can I get away with saying? And I think actually in a recent article that was written about my work, I liked how they described a leverage identity. I mean, there's a point of privilege that I have right there. I get to say things, and I get to have a commentary on things that, like, if I didn't have my identity, I would for sure get canceled. I wouldn't be able to say these things. So, like, I'm like, I love my privilege. I use my privilege all the time to, like, say the things that, like, other people necessarily can't say. Only I can really say them. And so, like, what am I getting away with in that? Like, what can I get away with saying? And people, like, if you can be smart about it, people aren't going to cancel you, but also you can make people think. So, like, I'm just trying to make people think. That's the most important aspect of, as a voice of an artist, you should have. Like, if you're not making people think, then you're just kind of making pretty paintings to put on people that are willing to pay money for your art. Pretty pictures to put on a wall. And then, are you really leaving a stamp on this earth? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think your work is brilliant, and you definitely have a unique voice, and it really resonates with me. When Forge reached out to me and said, "Hey, check out this guy," I was like, wow, he's really good. I definitely want to talk to him. So I think cool. You have I think you'll be leaving your mark. Let's put it that way.
I hope so, man. I mean, like, I don't know if you see my shirt, but this is from, the shirt says there's too many artists.
Yeah. I was wondering about that, actually.
Yeah. It's a release from a gallery in New York. I kind of like it. I don't know. I like it in the sense because I think we all are inherently creative, and we all have this artistic side of us. But also at the same time, like, I do feel like sometimes you're just a little drop in a bucket, a bunch of other people trying to do the same thing as you. And but yeah, no, I feel great that you guys had me on. I've been thinking more and more about, like, interviews, and I think it's really important. I kind of hold myself in regard to, like, when I actually feel very blessed when I'm given the opportunity to speak. Like, I have respect for that, because, like, there's people all around the world that got probably really important things to say, and so I feel, like, very blessed to be given the opportunity to express myself on a platform, and any size of platform. And so I thank you guys a lot for that.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I want to ask you, have you ever had the struggle with identity? Because you come from a unique background and unique situation. So
yeah. I definitely have. I think I still have an ongoing struggle with it, mostly because, believe it or not, like, I actually, when I went to high school, and people, like, actually find this pretty hard to believe, but in New Mexico, the high school I went to in Albuquerque, I was one of only maybe five or six Native kids that went to that high school, which is kind of weird, because now I look at a lot of the high schools, and even, like, I taught classes, and it's just, like, it seems actually more predominant. Like, there's a lot of Native people, and there's actually I feel like this younger generation behind me, like Gen Z, they're really about, like, reclaiming their identity, and they're actually really strong in sense of their identity. So, like, being connected to everyday secular culture, but then also growing up around my dad, who's, like, would be considered what he called traditional Pueblo. And so learning a lot from his experience. My dad grew up in a sheep camp. like out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and he has had a very unique experience with that. And then also me being half white too. So like my identity actually literally kind of changes with the seasons, and I think some other Native people probably would identify with this. Is like in the wintertime, I could honestly pass as white sometimes. You know, like my skin gets actually real pale. My features like look more white at that point in time. But in the summertime, I'm like real dark. I'm like real brown, and but also then growing up in New Mexico, people were like, "What are you like? Are you Hispanic? Are you Mexican?" They can't really put a toe on it, and so as I've probably in the past 4 years, I've kind of more reclaimed my identity in like in one aspect, one side, where like I speak a lot more of the language. I mean, I grew my hair out. I pierced my ears because like at the Pueblo I'm from, like they pierce the baby's ears and they put turquoise in them. Those kind of little things, those are like more outward external things. But I think more or less people that are struggling with identity, it's kind of like you want to feel like you have a place in the world, and it's a disconnect from a sense of community. And so you kind of like, I mean, that's why people join gangs, right? That's why people join gangs, because they want to have like a sense of brotherhood, a sense of belonging to something, you know. And I even look at like you could look at I don't know, this might be a little controversial, but like you could look at like what is white pride? And like everyone gets all hung up like, you can't say white pride, you can't have white pride, you know, you can't like have this like Aryan pride or anything like that. I'm like, how are we gonna, you know, how are you gonna deny someone who they are? There's no wonder they get all mad, because it's like they have no sense of like where they come from. You know, like a lot of white Americans don't really actually know. You ask them like, well, like what are you? They'd be like, well, I'm this, this, and that. I'm like, that's beautiful. You're all mixed up. You're all mixed up. We're actually all really mixed up. We're all like mutts, you know, and you should be proud of that. But its only problem is like when y'all get proud of it, y'all end up shooting schools up. So like, you know, you maybe dial it back a little bit, you know, and like
right. We should dial it back for sure. I would totally agree with that.
Oh, man.
It's all right to be proud of your background, but you can't be proud and oppress another one. You got to be proud with them and rise them up as well. That's how you can be proud. If I'm a proud white guy, I should be raising my black brothers and my Native American brothers up with my pride and their pride. It's when you squash the other person, that's when the problem is. And like you said, dial it back, motherfucker.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, so like, you got to be proud in the right aspects of any part of your heritage and identity.
Right.
You know, the biggest problem is like if you're proud of your white side, you got to acknowledge the fact that like y'all been on top for a very long time. You know, y'all been pushing down people for a really long time. So if you're going to be proud of that aspect, that's a little lost in the sauce there. So. But I honestly think that, I mean, maybe it's just that this is like my contradictory artist mindset. Is like I actually try to tell a lot of my, I mean, I got a lot of really close friends around me and brothers. I would call them brothers who are white around me, and like I tell them like, yo, man, you ain't gotta try to be this other thing. You can like be proud in yourself and be proud where you come from, and realize that like we're all just really. Only really care about what happened to us in the past like couple generations. You can't really look far back, you know, unless you come from like I know where I come from. I don't gotta do no ancestry.com, you know. You know, I know like my origin stories, you know, and that's beautiful. Like in like indigenous cultures, we cultivate that. We got our origin stories. Those are really important, you know. And then like even you look on the black side of things, like the origin stories of that is like, well, there's a real shitty period of that time where you're very oppressed and you were taken from another part of the world and then brought to another world into like basically become the driving force onto which this whole nation is built, and at the same time having, you know, a whole other people being genocided and slaughtered, you know. So you got to look at that and you got to acknowledge that, and I think that's the place where people need to start, and that's a good place to start. But also you can't just also keep penitentiating yourself, you know, like you gotta move forward and see how we're gonna all work together, and I think that's the most important thing, you know.
Yeah.
Then we're getting all deep again. I'm trying to like,
Yep.
I'm trying to be funny, you know.
So here's the deal. I mean, so you're using your art to bring back your culture, to connect your culture with, you know, the whole dichotomy of who you are as far as half white and half Native American. It's represented in your artwork. So there's a piece that I like yours. In fact, my wife really likes it. It's called Bullish Schizo with Color Field of Red. And, you know, and I don't know if this is and we don't even have to talk about it's a representation of you, although I think all art is autobiographical to a certain degree. But I love your work. It's very modernist looking. I love the solid color red. And it definitely, I feel like this is America from like this last year. And I don't know if it was painted last year, but boy, what a good representation of the United States from last year and up to today, right?
Yeah. I mean, that whole series, so like, I don't necessarily like things being definitively one thing. So, I mean, I've been working on this series of bulls for a while, and like what that represents, bulls and cows, and, it's all over the place. Like a bull can represent, it represents like some economic things with like Wall Street and stuff, you know, and it represents like there wasn't cattle here on this land before, you know, a lot of the Spanish came and a lot of like colonizing people came, settlers came over here. And there's also just like, if you take a road trip, what's the animal that you're predominantly going to see everywhere? It's going to be cows and it's going to be bulls, you know. And what do we eat like all the time? What's the main kind of like protein source? And then also like a bull doesn't necessarily have to be the cow bull. It could be like a buffalo bull that like the ghosts of all the buffalo that like wiped out pretty much a whole species, you know, a whole species extinct. So like there's a lot of stuff that can go into that, and then kind of morphing it and combining it with a human kind of aspect of things is real intriguing to me. Especially, you know, you put maybe a business suit on them, you know, and there's some things that go along with that, you know, there's some contextual things that go along with that. Or maybe you make it more freeing and has a more like radiant human aspect of it too. There's all kinds of stuff that goes in with the bulls. It's also like one of the paintings that I own of my dad's, he did a bull. I look at that every day, so there's that too. I probably shouldn't have said that. That gives away a little bit too much, but but also, yeah, Picasso painted bulls. There's a lot of like Spanish painters that painted a lot of bulls. So there's like the art history of that too. Yeah, and yeah, interesting stuff. Horns too. The horns represent, like, horns can be very malicious, or maybe they can be a little freeing too. Yeah.
Well, it's an intriguing piece. I really like it. So yeah.
Thank you.
This is one of the pieces I was looking at today, and I just happened to be scrolling and looking at it when my daughter walked through the room, and she was like, "That's awesome." This piece right here.
Oh yeah.
I really love this piece.
What's that called, Todd?
I just call it LUV.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
With a little copyright symbol.
Yeah.
Is that part of your thing?
I mean, that's borrowed from Basquiat. I'm not even going to be unapologetic about that, but yeah, that's cool. I like that you connect with that piece. That piece is, I mean, that's like definitely like more or less, you know, like a self-portrait. It's like the primary self. You know, there's a lot of. I mean, the eyeballs always just represent for me like viewpoints. You're like outward looking in or inward looking out. You know. Yeah, that's cool. You connect with that piece.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. And you wrote, to be in touch with all the perceptions of yourself as expressed in a passage of time between learning someone's body and exploring a different plane to which we all wish to go someday. To be in tune with your darkness in which your vision sees primitive urges. Yeah.
That's beautifully written. I love that.
Damn, I can't even believe I wrote that. Like, it's weird to hear it spoken like that, you know? Well, because most of the times, like, people always ask about the titles, and the titles are so spontaneous, right. And it's influenced a lot by. I mean, the writings. I mean, I used to write a lot too. I mean, like,
because you've written screenplays for your films.
Yeah, but I put out a couple little poetry books, like little zine, like poetry mixed with like photography and stuff, and like just abstract kind of little zines. I mean, because I, influenced a lot by like the beat poet culture too.
And your family actually has a connection to some of the beats, right?
Yeah. My dad knew Allen Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg actually kissed him. Allen Ginsberg, that all of those beat poets. Who's the other one? Michael Ferlinghetti. Who was it? Ferlinghetti, Allen Ginsberg. They actually hung out with my dad in Placitas here in Taos, in El Rito and stuff. So I mean, I grew up reading a lot of that stuff too. Langston Hughes, Ferlinghetti,
Kerouac
for sure, definitely. Dharma Bum's one of my absolute favorite books of all time. So like kind of just like the way that they wrote, and kind of just like this like rambling thought process has always been involved with the titles as well. Yeah, that was kind of real interesting hearing you speak that, because I don't think I've ever heard it out loud. So it's like, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds good.
It's
It
amazing. It's brilliant.
So what was the medium that you used to paint that? Is it same thing kind of, or do you remember?
If I can remember. Oh, that was a mixture. The red in that painting is a satin paint. A satin paint it's a house paint. But yeah, a lot of stuff, like, I actually photograph all my work too, just because I mean I know how to. It's nice being a former photographer that knows how to do those things. But some of my stuff actually doesn't photograph that well because there's a lot of sheen, because there's like different. There's like satin paints mixed with like really matted paints mixed with crayon on top of stuff that looks even like a different matte on top of it. So sometimes you don't actually see a lot of the
nuance.
Yeah, the different materials, different layers. For a while there, for a little bit, I don't know how deep you guys went back, but like I actually used to, and I stopped doing it because I was like a little sketched out. I used to burn stuff a lot with like a little flamethrower.
I seen one video.
I
where
did
you
see
were
a
doing
picture
that.
of you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the torch with the lighter.
Yep.
I stopped doing that just because I'm like, I've been cheating death a little bit with that, because you can really, really hurt yourself. And I had to tell people that see me do that, I'm like, yo, don't do that. Don't do it, because it's very dangerous. But I used to do that, and it would add just like this glaze or this, I would do it on wet paint when the paint was really, really wet. And it would heat it up, and it would like kind of glaze it a bit and add this texture on it. So some of my older work has that done to it. Just exploring, man. Just being a kid. Just being like, just getting in there with real cheap brushes. I don't use expensive brushes. I would feel really bad if I used expensive brushes. Yeah. Just like I said, my art store is the Lowe's Home Improvement.
That's awesome.
Is this a recent piece that I have up here right now?
Yeah, I'm going to have that piece up in Denver. It's actually a somewhat smaller piece of work. These are like these landscapes I'm kind of exploring. Kind of more like trying to have a peaceful feeling to it, because sometimes, like a lot of the work is like real intense, real dark sometimes, and I kind of like having these pieces that speak a little bit more to like what it feels like to just see a beautiful landscape and just have it explored. Van Gogh, I was like, yo, what if Van Gogh owned a spray can, and some markers? I feel like he would paint like this if Van Gogh was around today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love you using those symbols again,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the repetition that you use a lot of times with these symbols in your pieces. You do that a lot.
Yeah, that's I would be remiss if I didn't actually mention Rocky again, talking about the way like a language is kind of more or less developed. I learned that a lot of other artists did that, but like when I was younger, I always kind of took that when he would talk about like, oh, I'm doing my scribbles, it's about this language, and if you do something enough times in repetition on enough pieces, people are like, oh yeah, this symbol relates to this. I don't necessarily know what it means, but I'm seeing it over and over again. Or it's like a bar a little bit from Keith Haring too, but I mean, all of that comes from even just like part of my identity too. Petroglyphs, the original graffiti writers, man, petroglyphs, writing stuff on the walls, and symbols, even like hobo graffiti, like certain. Oh man, gosh, I love looking up hobo graffiti, because different little symbols meant different things to just to travelers,
Man,
Yeah, that's right.
that's how they talk to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No,
these
and
people would put you up for the night, and these people would feed you, or this person that lives here is mean, or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. Don't
yeah.
get off here. Good place to eat over here. That kind of stuff.
But I definitely felt that when I saw this piece. So I'm glad you brought this up, Todd. Well, he knows how much I love landscapes, but I seen like, the drawings of the ancients in the Southwest. I mean, immediately, and obviously seeing those images along with a Southwest plateau kind of landscape makes you go there. But that's exactly what I went to right away was, the drawings, the petroglyphs of the ancients. I love that.
Yeah.
And this one's called Night Skies Over the Mesa near San
Isidro. San Isidro. Yeah,
Okay.
San Isidro. It's near you're in Jemez Pueblo, out like 45 minutes north of Albuquerque.
And for those that are listening, you don't have to scroll down very far to find this particular piece. I can't wait to see this in person when you come to Denver.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you there for sure. I'm stressing out a little bit for this show.
Why's that?
It'll be funny. It'll be funny to hear this like right before it. Like, man, you're gonna like hear like, oh man, you were like, just because I got a lot to take care of. I'm framing up a lot of the stuff myself. This period. In the past, I had a pretty close relationship with someone that does all my framing. But yeah, he's a little busy right now, and I'm actually kind of take pride in like my carpentry skills have gotten a lot better in the past couple of years. So I'm doing a lot of my framing for my stuff this show. So doing that this week, and yeah, I got a lot to get done. But let's get.
Well, then we really appreciate you spending time with us this evening.
Yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about the films that you've made. Obviously, you come from a lineage of storytellers, and you were a photographer, or you still are a photographer, but you early on that was kind of your medium of choice, photography.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're like a little kid, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, this goes back to growing up in the time period I grew up in. In digital, like I grew up in digital age when a lot of things were changing. I remember when there were still pagers. I remember when there were still landlines. I remember when there was still dial-up and stuff. And so, like, it grew up in a real big transition of technology, and then seeing it explode. I mean, I grew up shooting film and then shooting digital with photography. So, but photography's always just been about conveying the way you see the world. And yeah, that's. Like I've always had the aspect of like I'm trying to tell a story though, because one thing I am somewhat proud of is like people have told me that like, well, your photography always just was trying to tell a story. So I'm like, okay, that's all I ever wanted to do with that. But like what I tell photographers nowadays is like, all right, okay, cool, photography, the medium. Don't get attached to the medium. Just get attached to like what you're trying to show the world how you see. Like, and some people just get real attached to like the technology of it, and like they get in like, well, look at like all these filters I can use, or like look what I can do in Photoshop, you know, and like there's a lot of cool digital art that happens in today's world with that too. But like, what are you trying to get across is more always the more important thing, you know.
How many films have you made?
I mean, that's always a difficult question because like I've made a lot of like little short things, but I've made two films. Well, I've yet to show a feature film, I would say. I've yet to put out a feature film. I had one edited, but it didn't. I didn't feel like it was. Film is weird because you don't get as much of slack as you do with painting or photography, or people are way more harsh with the criticism of film because, I mean, what is the famous thing like when you see a bad movie? That's 2 hours I won't get back, you know. So people are pretty critical with it. So yeah, no, I've made two things. I was very fortunate to make a project called Jackrabbit. That was a real personal piece to me, in the way that it's kind of interesting talking about it now because I feel like I haven't talked about it in a while. That was like 3 years of my life where it completely took over my life. I would do things like this and talk about it, and I think that's one reason why I rebelled against film, or not rebelled, I guess, put it on the shelf to kind of go back to it. It got kind of tainted having to always be promoting, always be pitching, always be like people always like, what's your next project, you know? And with painting, you just be like, you still painting? I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, that's what I do every day, you know? Whereas like with film, it's like very much like it's a long-term process. It's a long-term medium. It's like you have to get it all, the pieces got to line up. And it's very frustrating when they don't line up, and you go through a lot of like beating your head against the wall of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this collaboration didn't work out with this person, or like, oh, like the story is just like this other story, you know, that you see on Netflix and they're not doing it as good or something, you know, or like you go to like these pitching meetings and you'd be like, I feel like I nailed it, and then they don't give it to you, but then you see they give it to someone else and you're like, that story is like whack, you know, like so there's a lot that like is in film that's not as fun, but I mean, I look up to like a lot of the more indie directors like Richard Linklater, like obviously Quentin Tarantino, like Paul Thomas Anderson, people that just went out and did it. They just made it happen. So right now I'm waiting for the right timing on that. And I think personally, it's teaching me a lot of patience to release the feature film that I want to put out into the world, that I feel like is actually worth saying, and not just. I mean, I get asked all the time to be on projects where it's like, yo, come like be attached to this project. We're gonna pitch it to Netflix. We're gonna pitch it to Amazon, and then you read the script and you're like, man, there's more content out there more than ever right now, and it's really hard to get seen for something that's like actually important. It's going to like be a movie that you want to see in theaters, you know, which is kind of sad because we're all like attached to like streaming services. And I think we lost a lot of that you don't really sit through a movie in a movie theater anymore. You know, it's just kind of like, here's the content that fits your algorithm. You should like it if it fits your algorithm, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I miss about movies is I like being divorced from the outside world and sitting in a movie theater.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I just watch documentaries if I'm going to watch a film, because that's kind of where I gravitate towards. But if I'm at home, I sit on the couch and I do one of two things. I either fall asleep because I don't start watching it till later in the evening or whatever, or I start thinking about the things that I should be doing. And so like halfway through, I'm like, I just missed a whole part of that movie because I was contemplating what I should have been doing. Whereas in the movie theater, it's all dark. I'm sitting there. I'm in my space, right? Yeah. And so I have more of a personal relationship with that film, and I'll pay attention. But yeah, if I'm sitting on my couch, any number of things could, distract me or prevent me from finishing that movie or watching it, unless I'm really, incredibly engrossed in the subject matter.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like I got in a little bit of trouble with Sundance because we were in some discussion, and I kind of just broke apart. I'm like, yo, like, I don't really think Sundance is really representative of like independent filmmakers anymore, because it's just part of the content creating machine. And all I did was ask a provoking question, and I'm like, yo, are we even going to be writing screenplays in the future? We're on this model of, just creating stuff that's made for algorithms and content to cater to people's identities and what they think they're going to really be susceptible to. It's like, so they got all mad at me, and so I just like left. But I left conversation. But but yeah, I get that. Like, I think. And it's kind of interesting now that everything's opening back up. People are like, yo, I'm going to go watch a movie. And then they'll go watch a movie, and like you can even rent out theaters and have it to yourself and stuff. And that's kind of interesting. But it's interesting to hear like everyone has that experience where I can't pay attention because I'm stuck in my house, and like there's just so many distractions and everything, which makes it weird that we're making so much content. We're like, there's more content available now than ever in the history of mankind for people at your fingertips. You can watch movies on your phone if you wanted to, and I'm like, I don't know if you want to have that experience. But also at the same time, I'm like, I'm not against like, what's the future going to be? Disclaimer on this next one, no one steal my IP. But I'm working with a developer right now to make an algorithm that also uses speech to capture stories, especially like oral stories from like indigenous communities, that will someone can speak like a whole story out, and it'll make it into screenplay format and then just output a screenplay.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's tough right now because a lot of the AI learning for like speech is not completely there. But and it kind of just came from, there's some quote. It's like, if you want something done, you don't ask a smart man, ask a lazy man. And because the lazy man will figure out the quickest and best way to do it. And so it came from like, like a lot of the optics and a lot of the grant writing that goes along with especially Native American film within America is how are we going to capture and preserve these Native stories. And it's stuck on kind of an old model, I think, where it's like you go out, you capture it like in like the traditional format, and then you put it together and you make a screenplay, or you do a documentary or something like this. I'm like, yo, what if we like literally just went out, we give them these devices. You could be on a smartphone, it could be an app. I'm leaning towards it being an app because I think that's where everything's going to be. But they literally just sit there and these voices records them, and then the AI machine learns. It could even be different languages. That's why the language database needs to come around. That's kind of where we're stuck at. It's kind of hard to, you have to have a whole database of that language. But if they could do it in English, just trying to get towards English right now. Just here's the speech dictation and turns it into a screenplay, outputs, sends it to the printer or whatever. Then you shop your screenplay around. Because my biggest like conundrum always was with movies, even me being a writer, was always just like, true artistry like doesn't come from like people approving your screenplay. and I hate getting stuck up in that. People are always just like, oh, we approve the screenplay. I'm like, because like by the time it's actually done and being like even on sets and like working with like some like world-class directors, they changed it all up anyway. So like, why does everything always get bogged down? It's a lot of gatekeeping, I feel like, with like grants and stuff. And like, they want you to be this version of this outdated model of how people always made movies. So I was like, yo, if I'm going to help my indigenous filmmakers out, let's make this thing where like we go out and you just dictate a story, because we have all these rich oral tradition stories that would be some of the most epic movies ever made. But, I don't know why. I'm just trying to remove a step,
Yeah.
A gatekeeping step.
Streamline it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, because that's looking forward. That's forward thinking, forward future thinking,
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. It's
So
brilliant.
nobody steal that idea.
Yeah. No,
You've heard it. You heard it here.
Nobody steal my IP. I'm gonna NFT it somehow so no one can steal it.
There you go.
So you made Jackrabbit, and
Mm-hmm.
you also made a movie called The Land, correct?
Yeah, The Land, Stories of the People. That was a really cool project. I think it's got me, and I'm kind of a little bit just thinking out loud. It's got me thinking in 2022 that I'm going to do a similar follow-up project. The Land was really dope because I got connected with Kat Lowe. She's the founder of Eaton Project in Washington, D.C. Coincidentally, they're a hotel. They listed themselves as the anti-Trump hotel in Washington, D.C. It's if you're in Washington, D.C., definitely go check it out. It's a really cool little spot. I'm trying to go out there in December. But I got connected with Kat Lowe. We bonded over the book Dharma Bums, Jack Kerouac, because she wanted to film a documentary about activism across the United States while also on a road trip. So we road tripped in 7 days from California to Washington, D.C., and also shot a movie at the same time. It was really fun. It was stressful for me because I was the one kind of more or less working. I had a lot of great times. I met a lot of really great people. I think after watching it, and actually watching it in 2020, there's a lot of stuff in the film that's like, whoa, these are like some premonitions of things that are going to happen. We were filming it like, you're in the middle of Trump presidency, so a lot of it had to do is like response to things that are happening around that time period. A lot of stuff about climate change, and there's stuff in it that I'm like, wow, that's honestly, people need to see and hear this probably more than they did need to hear it back in 2018. So yeah, it was really fun. Like I said, 2022, I want to do a similar project, a road trip. I think I'm going to go back and forth and just like go back to some of the communities that we didn't really get to interview, because it's like we had like an hour. Like sometimes I had like an hour to interview people, and you had to go move off to the next location. So it's kind of hard to.
It's hard to get content when you're on that kind of schedule.
Yeah, and then you're also like you're road tripping too, so you're like going on like 2 hours of sleep. I can't believe like during that road trip, I drove probably more than half the time too. So it was like I had like 2 people in the car with me, but I don't know. I drove half of it. I mean, I like driving, but like still, I was like, man, I probably shouldn't have drove as much. But it was fun.
Talk about the premise of Jackrabbit so that people have some context of what that movie that you made is about.
Yeah. Wow, this is cool to talk about this. Like after 2 years of not talking about it. It's a film that holds dear to my heart. The premise is it's a family story. It's about brothers and lineage. Lineage is being very important. So like if I can look at my own lineage, I think people can start to look at their lineage and their relationships with their family members, and nothing's perfect. It follows the main character, Wes. He's this uncle that's come back. He's actually a veteran. He's a veteran from the Iraq War, actually. And he comes back and he's trying to reconnect with his family, his brother, and his nephew. He kind of has a lot of pride about him, and he thinks that his family is really like fucking up and not taking care of, especially his nephew. And Junior is the name of the nephew. He sees him out running in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, oh, he has this little bonding, connecting moment, and he's trying to give him very, very awkwardly some sense of like, yo, your family's not giving you any idea of your culture. Your family's not giving you any sense of where you come from, your place. And so he kind of tries to relay that, but in like a really human, awkward way. And like, I felt it was really true to like he wouldn't just be like, yo, here's some wisdom, kid. And then like, it's happily ever after, I took some personal stuff from my own life and put it into it, where ever since I was young, the sweat lodge was a really important aspect of life to me, and which is also kind of weird because as Pueblo Indians, we don't really, that isn't like traditionally part of our culture. But my dad was ordained in the sweat by someone from Tlingit up in Montana. And so my dad ran sweats ever since I was a little kid. Have you ever done a sweat?
I have.
Yeah, I mean, you could do DMT or you could do mushrooms, but you could also do a sweat. It's a very psychedelic experience, a very spiritual experience. And I was doing it since I was like 6 years old. So it was really important to me. And I remember there was one point when I was a very impressionable age. I was probably like middle school or something like that. And someone that I looked up to that was kind of more or less teaching me songs and teaching me about language and teaching me what it like meant to be like Indian. I found him passed out, just drunk, just passed out in the sweat. And to me, that was like a huge blow in the face of like, and disrespect and disregard for something that I'm like, wow, this is someone that I thought really respected and was teaching me. And so I add a little bit of that aspect into the movie. It's not like word for word how it is, but by the end of the movie, you're more or less thinking about, what does it mean to be an uncle? What does it mean to be an auntie? And I think that's a relationship within community. I mean, circling back to community, there needs to be more aunties and uncles. There needs to be more people like bringing up the youth and teaching them like, hey, like, the old adage of like, it takes a village to raise a child. It doesn't just take parents, like you see some parents struggling in raising a kid. You step in, be an uncle, even if you're not related to them. Or you step in and be an auntie, So that's more or less the message of it. It's 15 minutes short. One day, I still have the rights. I almost sold the rights to the feature on it. There's a feature script on it. That's on the back burner. Maybe, maybe one day we'll make the feature. If someone threw some money at me, they might go make the feature. Like I could do that tomorrow. It'd be cool. It would be cool to do that. Yeah, so that's Jackrabbit. I made it with my friends, which was cool. It was really fun to make it with a group of people that like I went to school with, that just they volunteered their time. I paid them all. I didn't pay them like their union rates, but yeah, it's cool to see like the support of like wanting for like to make something that I was passionate about. And it also realized that I'm really good at directing, if I do say so myself. Yeah.
Going back to painting, are you represented by galleries in New Mexico currently, or anywhere else in the United States?
So like that's a slippery slope because I would say I work with some galleries that have my back. Shout out Greg, Fahrenheit Gallery, and then probably going to be working with ARTAOS Gallery, ARTAOS Contemporary on Canyon Road in Santa Fe. But I think more or less, I mean, like the way I'm playing the game, I don't necessarily want to step into any kind of contracts necessarily. I've been offered some, and I always try to rework it to where I don't have any exclusivity. I grew up in the age of the internet, and I use the internet right now to my advantage. Like anyone can find me on my website or Instagram, and they can buy directly from me. So I think it's really changed to where you don't necessarily need gallery representation. I think my mindset and strategy is if you're going to get gallery representation, it should be more or less strategic in what legitimacy are they bringing you. Because sometimes, you know, like galleries, they need artists, and sometimes they need more or less controversial characters, or sometimes they just need people that sell work. And like I can be both those things on my own, or you know I could work with galleries. So it's like it's a relationship, and sometimes it's a business relationship, but sometimes you want to cultivate like a more or less personal relationship and kind of like put the business like on the back burner of that. So I would like to. I mean, like with ARTAOS, like the reason why I even said yes to Forge is like I've had a good feeling with Forge. We had a great time last year, and but I can't imagine like some other places calling me up like, yo, you got to get a body of work up here like in like what was it, a month's time. I was like, I wouldn't do that for some people, you know. But I love Forge. I love Aya over there. They really hosted me, and they really extended their arm last year when I was out there. I'm also in October. We haven't set a date, an exact date, but probably will be a month-long show at OG Gallery in Los Angeles. Shout out Frank Castro out there. He's a really cool dude. We're me and him again, like nurturing a relationship. We're gonna have a dual show out there, and yeah, so it's like the art world's at a really kind of interesting point in time right now. Like again, going back, would Mark Rothko be slinging his paintings on Instagram right now? I don't know. You know, would Cy Twombly be like painting like on Instagram live right now? I don't know. Like, there's like some mystery you want to keep about things, but there's also like it's a world you have to navigate, and like even doing things like this, I think about like I don't want to say too much, but then also you gotta like let people know who you are personally too. So yeah, gallery representation. I don't know. I'm figuring that out. I'm a young artist. I'm in my young career, so it's kind of cool to figure out, learn that, you know, and talk to other people. I have a lot of older artists that keep myself surrounded with. That's, I think, pretty strategic. It's always like people that are like slightly older than me. They dealt with like stuff. I'm like, I ask them all the time, like, yo, like, what am I supposed to do? They offered me this, and they're like, well, you could do this or that, you know. So yeah, I feel fortunate that I have a pretty good roadmap of what to do.
Yeah, it's good to have mentors.
Yeah, having that community, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you typically sell art? Do you sell a lot off social media? Do you have collectors there in New Mexico or from other places around the nation?
So back in, I mean, I think it really did change up. 2020 really changed everything up because all the galleries were closed. You know, we weren't having in-person shows anymore. I heard that at Art Basel, it was actually 2020 was the highest grossing year they've ever had in terms of art sold, and that was because all of it was online. So more people were looking at art online now more than ever. I'm pretty fortunate that I've connected with people that like aren't within my immediate family or friend group. There's this, I mean, there's a big myth about, well, it's not really necessarily a myth. There's a truth. There's a truth in the art world that the majority of like actually highly successful artists, they come from a circle of wealth, because the majority of the time it's going to be your friends and family that are buying your work. And it's only kind of very recently in the age of the internet, going back again to the age of the internet, that artists are more or less finding collectors that are outside of their friends and family circle of people. So yeah, I would say a lot of my collectors, like the ones that actually collect some of my bigger work, they just found me through I mean, the Instagram, or some of them were shows. Some of them were shows that I had. But yeah, and I'm like, I could not make it at all without the support of like a lot of my friends. And there's also this like misconception too about like how if you're a successful artist, that means you had like you had your parents bankroll you or something. Because I mean, a lot of times you're like, oh man, I can't pay my rent, and then you're like, your parents come in and swoop in and pay your rent. That isn't the case with me. My parents do not have a lot of money. If anything, I'm trying to sell a lot of my work so I can give them a better life. I mean, they have an amazing life. They have a real great life. But there's a lot of things I wish I could give them, and or just my family in general too. But yeah, no. 2019, I was literally living out of my car. Then I had like a job at a coffee shop. Then the pandemic hit. Lost my job at the coffee shop. Had like $400 to my name, and I was always painting at that time. I, through some drama, kind of lost my studio. Moved into a new studio. Pandemic hit. I didn't get unemployment. I was one of those few people that kind of slipped through the cracks because I didn't work enough at a job, and I don't know. But I kind of took that as like all right, here you go. This is your moment. Like, and I spent, of that $400 to me, I spent $300 of that on art supplies, and then ever since then, it's that's where I'm at right now, and I'm just so grateful for everything, because going from sleeping in your car and like freezing below temperatures to, at least I have an apartment now, it's pretty dope.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
It is
a great story.
Yeah.
And good for you to keep grinding and making stuff happen, and just, not taking your eye off the ball,
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's definitely times. I mean, like, it's also just, I tell a lot of people, like, I think the reason why things work out is because I'm a risk taker. I'm a gambler. I'm so much of a gambler. It's almost too easy for me to gamble. Like sometimes, like, I'm actually trying to nurture more, like, all right, let's be a little more like maybe don't go for broke sometimes on certain things,
Don't go all in.
Yeah. Don't go all in on things sometimes, Yeah.
Continuing down this path about talking a little bit about the business and how you do things, you spoke a little bit about just vaguely on pricing. How do you go about pricing your work?
So you got to look at like what market you're in. So like where I'm at currently in Albuquerque, the art market is evolving, I would say, especially with more of the money that's coming in. But also, like, so that's like the smart answer. If I'm going to give the artist answer is I look at people that are doing maybe similar stuff as me in terms of scale, in terms of how quickly they make it, and maybe, I don't know, like what they're saying, and I'm like, I'm saying something worth way more than them. So I'll charge more than what they're charging then.
So take that number and tack on a couple hundred more.
Yeah. But also at the same time, I don't like art that gets to like ridiculously high auction house prices. That's just kind of ridiculous, especially for like a living artist. And even more for like a dead artist, because like, can you imagine like all these artists that are dead and then just like they're rolling in their graves, like they didn't make nearly as much money as they would be making right now. And then even some of these living artists, like, like Damien Hirst and Jeff Koons and all these real big guys, that, I mean, art as philanthropy is like a major business, and I mean, everyone's going to comment on that. Everyone has their own thing about that. And my big thing with like you gotta do have to have a goal in your mind of like the business side of it, since like it is a part of what I do. The business side is a part of it. Like I do sell art, and within capitalism, that's the commodity that I necessarily think. It's a more sincere and I don't know, necessarily noble, but like it means something, and I'm passionate about it. It's something that I want to do, but it is at some point a physical thing that you're slanging. And the way I look at that is like you look at some of these like major big artists, and they'll make money off of doing like one thing that's kind of, in most cases, I think really hollowed out, plastic, and insincere. But then later on in their career, in their retrospective, and they're still alive, they haven't died yet, they manufacture sincerity. They're like, no, 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 no. I'm trying to be sincere now, like after the fact that they've like made all this money, and there's got to be some guilt where they're like, oh man, I made something off of something that wasn't really all that sincere. So in my career, what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to remain sincere from the very start, and so I don't have to. If I ever do get to a point where I don't know. On the Howard Stern show or something, you know, I don't have to like make up some weird, sincere story back then. And I mean, like, there's roadmaps for it too. You know, like my current favorite artist, living artist right now, is David Cho, and his how he's just unequivocally himself, and he's really unapologetically not apologizing for how, like, you know, how fucked up his life is and what he's going through, you know. So like I really appreciate that, and he knows and he acknowledges I just got lucky. He got lucky with all that Facebook money and stuff, and that's kind of like there's a lot of luck that goes into art too, you know. Every single time I sell a painting, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, how? I'm like, how? Like, this is crazy. Like, you know, like I did something, and it was a passage of time, and I was in the studio for like maybe a day, or like I was in the studio for like a month, or, you know, and something happened, and like I showed it to the world, and someone felt like compelled to pay me money for it. That's crazy. That's so crazy to me, you know. And that's why I say, like, I have a little joke. I'm like, yo, all proceeds of everything I ever make goes to help my fellow human fund. And in that, like, everything that I do, like, I always try to find someone either that's close to me or someone I don't know. It could be a small act, but like, just always giving back, no matter what. Like some kind of proportion. Sometimes it's bigger. They talk about like there's a certain number in your head of like human happiness of like money. You know, what is it, like 75K a year? I keep mine even lower than that. I'm like, to be happy, I don't need that much money. I try to live really low in my means, and so like everything else is just bonus. I'm trying to help people out. So I mean, that's cool. I get to game the system. I don't got to work a 9-to-5 job, you know, and I get to like have fun, and then if I can help people out, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Our friend Bob Ragland always said every art sale is a miracle, and he just never took it for granted. So, and he was a hustler. So let me ask you, where does a original Jesse Littlebird piece, what is the price range? Where does it start at, and what does it go up to depending on the size of the piece? Yeah,
cool. As of right now, it's kind of cool because like the smaller pieces, I kind of feel actually a little more rare. In terms of like originals, I do prints. But I'll have a big 8x8 foot piece at the show in Denver, and that'll be priced in the I still have to talk with Forge about stuff, but it'll be priced in the $6,000 to $9,000 range. And like that price is really calculated because I mean, you go walk into any gallery that's a painting that big. Honestly, that painting is probably going to be $25,000 to $50,000.
Yep.
I've sold pieces that big in that price range. So that's where I'm at right now in terms of my career as a living working artist. So that's an 8x8 foot painting. All the way down to some of my smaller work is 2 by 3 feet. and that's gonna be around $800, five to $800, depending on what it is. And so yeah, in between there and there. I don't necessarily do commissions. I did a commission for actually a movie, where they had my art in a movie. I'm kind of curious to see what this movie sounded kind of weird when they were telling me about it, but the way I do commissions is someone tells me like, "Hey, I like this," but like maybe it already sold because of my originals. Like I don't necessarily do like I do one, and then I'm like, "Oh, people like this," and my rule is kind of like, "All right, don't do a bunch of that. Do something different," you know. But some people like they'll come to me like, "I like this." So what I'll do is I'll do like a series of like 4 of them, and then they can pick out of those 4 which ones they like the most in a certain, and then like think about like the size they want and stuff like that. Another thing is like, I mean, this kind of sounds braggadocious, and Forge would probably hate me saying this, but I don't. People are like, "Man, I love your work, but I don't have anywhere to fit it on my wall in my house." I'm like, well, like I don't necessarily make art to put on people's walls. You know, that's cool when it does fit on their walls and put on. You know, they could put something on their wall, and that's why the small pieces I feel like are worth a lot more, are more rarer, because it's like, yo, you can actually fit this on your wall. But like where I'm at as an artist, like the size range that I like and the scale that I like, I want stuff to be shown in a gallery or like museum kind of setting, like where you have to sit with it presence. Going back to Rothko too, you know, Rothko had like he wanted his stuff to be displayed a certain way, and as an artist, that's what I want. So if I gotta sell like some small paintings so I can fund the things to do that, that's cool. That's where I'm trying to get to.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
You sound like you live within your means and you're relatively frugal, but when you get a big sale, a big payday, what do you do with your money?
Go have a steak dinner. I mean, I take care of my friends a lot. Yeah, I take care of my friends. I feel like I do have a lot of childhood friends or just friends around me that like they probably need money more than me at the time. Or if they don't, I mean, I'll take care of myself. I like having things too, you know. But I like sharing mostly. I like sharing. I would never go someplace by myself. I'm like, if I'm going on vacation, I'd be like, yo, let's go. You would never be able to go. Like I have friends in New Mexico that have never seen the ocean, you know. So like I have like a list of people like, yo, we're gonna go see the ocean. So like, those are some things. I want to see the world. You know, I feel like the most important thing you can do as a person is really just see the world and get to know the world better. So like travel, you know, all the money goes to travel. I would be remiss in saying that the nonprofit that I'm a board member on, we're trying to raise money and trying to fund the creation of our Indigenous Learning Center out there. So yeah, we're trying to build a center. So we have like all the plans, all the architectural plans for it and everything. But it's a long process on that. And the nonprofit world's a whole nother thing. But yeah, any little bit, like I don't know. Sometimes it goes to just. I mean, what was it? Last year I bought a chainsaw. I felt like that was I have fun. I love chopping wood. That's a recreation for me. So yeah, I got a couple chainsaws and yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's funny because and people that don't know, like if you depending on where you live, but I have friends in Southern Colorado and in New Mexico, like chopping wood's a big deal because there's still places where that's the main source of heat.
Yep.
And that's people still cook with wood. And I knew this woman in Southern Colorado. That's how she cooked. She had this, this old stove, and man, she could cook. How you regulate the temperature and do all the amazing things she did with that stove it's mind blowing.
Well, when you come down to New Mexico, Todd, when you both come down to Mexico, That's how my mom lives. She cooks on a wood stove, and that's their source of heat in wintertime.
Oh,
They live completely 100% off grid out at our nonprofits land, and yeah, that's what they use. They use a wood stove to cook. So like all through the wintertime, that's what I'm doing. I'm just providing wood for them. Uh, yeah, she's an amazing cook too. She's like probably the best chef. I keep telling her like, "Yo, we need to just have you open a restaurant because that's what we need to do."
there you go. Yeah.
I want you to speak about this nonprofit because it was something I did want to talk about. And since you mentioned it, tell our listeners what that's all about.
Yeah. So Hamaatsa, that name is a Keres word. Keres is the language of a couple tribes along the Rio Grande Basin in New Mexico. The word means continuum or a place coming into being now. My dad named it. So it's a spot on the earth, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to where it is currently in New Mexico. It just literally means a place coming into being now, which I think is an amazing word. What we're doing right now with it, as I'm kind of more or less transitioning into taking more a director's role, because I'm an assistant director there, is something that I'm passionate about. And what's really big right now is land back, if anyone knows that hashtag. So my dad is an example, and I want to use him as an example of how tribes and individuals can get their land back, get land seceded to them, or buy land outright and build satellites and communities as ways of indigenous living, but also just forward thinking too. So really thinking about that word Hamaatsa, a place coming into being now, which means you take from the past, but you also got to look forward and how we're going to survive on this planet that's only getting hotter. It's only getting more hostile, and we're only losing water more and more too. So going forward into what Hamaatsa is representing, that's where I would like it to be. And just a little backstory, where Hamaatsa is currently at, it's a 320 acres smack dab in the middle of New Mexico. If you look at a map of New Mexico and you put your finger right down in the middle, that's where it's located. So how that came about was my parents, pretty much their whole, since I was a kid, they were looking for land to make their vision realized. We looked all over the place. We were in southern Colorado. We were like even in Arizona, all over New Mexico. My mom was looking on like real estate stuff all the time. She came across this piece of property, and there's like 320 acres. They're only looking like for maybe 5. There was no way that we could get 320 acres. They went and checked it out anyway. Long story short, they took some donors that were looking to secede some land or help indigenous people get land, buy land. This is way before like land back. The hashtag is real big right now, but this is like back in 2009, 2008. Another crazy time because the recession was happening at that time. Anyway, they bought this land for $1 million, and what happened was some special donors came through. I was like, we'll give you $500,000 if you can find the other 500 to match it. They sent my parents to a seminar where it's I don't remember her name, some famous lady that helps nonprofits fundraise, and she was up there and she's like, the first rule of fundraising is you have to have a very clear ask and want of what you want. My dad stood up. He's like, I'm Larry Littlebird. Since he was a kid, my land has been receding and receding, getting smaller and smaller, and I'm here to ask for my land back. Someone in the crowd heard that. They came out and they matched that $500,000, and they bought that piece of property. And since then, we've been holding programs out there to be part of our mission. We hold retreats and also indigenous like learning programs where we teach just ways of cultivating a better life, basically. Right now, we're in a transition period. We're trying to figure out logistics of things, like kind of like because my parents are getting older, so I'm kind of taking over a lot of stuff. So we're trying to have just path of succession. Yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. So that's what we do.
So how can they find your nonprofit? Is there a website?
Yeah, I'll give you the link. It's www.hamaatsa.org. HAMAATSA.org.
We'll make sure that that's in the episode notes this week.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
We'll wrap things up here. You're coming to Denver here in the next week.
Yeah.
You have this show at Thrive Ballpark. What else do you have going on? You have anything else going on here in Denver?
I'm going to do a mural at ARTAOS Gallery, and maybe potentially, I don't know, Forge is still trying to work things out, another mural down in Rhino. I'm going to be busy. I'm going to ask for some suggestions for places to eat and drink and be merry. So, I mean, I try to turn these work trips into like a little bit of a work vacation, you know? So,
well, you're hanging with the right guy with Forge, because he'll definitely know where to go for good food and drink.
Yeah. And I'm going up there. Another shout out. I'm going up there with my good friend Joel, who's an amazing sculpture artist and mosaic artist. He's kind of been my right hand man for the past year here. He's going to help me install the show, and he's just fun to hang out with. He's a really cool guy. He's got a really crazy life too, and we're going to try to go meet up. He used to live in Denver, so he's got some friends with some of the graffiti scene there, the RTD cats, and so yeah, we'll hopefully get a chance to connect with that. I love Denver, man. I love it's got a cool vibe. I just love driving around all the time out there, you know. Maybe we'll get a chance to go up into the mountains, you know, maybe go a little hike or something. But yeah, should be a fun trip.
What can people expect to see when they come to your show?
What can they expect? I hope they have no expectations, but what can they expect to see? I think I would keep your mind open to. I just want people to have a realization of where we're at in time right now, in terms of where we're at in terms of society, where we're at with this country, and then a little bit of part of me too. If you get a chance to meet me, I would say my painting's probably better than my words, so just sit there and look at it for a little bit longer instead of listening to me talk for too long. You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man, it's important to set with it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
The title of the show, Western Hyperreality, how did you decide on that title?
So in the past year, I've been reading a lot of postmodern, metamodern philosophy and theory, and it talks about, hyperreality. There's a lot of definitions for that. There's some clear definitions of that. So mine's kind of like trying to define that in my own right, have my opinion on that. Western hyperreality. It's a commentary a lot on this big transition, exodus of people coming from the West Coast, even come from the East Coast to these different cities, new communities forming, communities leaving, the bulls being very present in that. Maybe some of these little more lighthearted characters of like a Western movie, you know, talking about like maybe some of the old spaghetti Westerns. There's some influence there. Some of the characters are heroes, some of them are anti-heroes, you know, stuff like that. I won't say too much more after that.
Right on, man. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time that you did this evening. I know you're trying to hustle to get all your stuff done for this show. And I really appreciate your willingness to spend a couple 3 hours with us this evening.
No, I appreciate you guys so much. I feel like this is like a very pleasant podcast experience. I always hate it when like there's a podcast and they're like, we'll have you on, and then it's like you talk for 15 minutes. And this is like I love the long form aspect of it, and I really appreciate you guys listening to me ramble a little bit. You guys will have your work cut out for you editing, but no, thank you guys so much for sure.
Well, this was a great conversation. You were so well spoken, and I love the topics we talked about. So yeah, once again, like Todd said, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to your show, and hopefully I'll be able to come down and catch it as well.
Oh no, that'd be great. I'd love if you came down west. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
You guys asked some really good provoking questions. I really appreciated it. Definitely.
Good.
Nice.
Thanks.
Again, Jesse's show opens July 9th at Thrive Ballpark Workplace. It's called Western Hyperreality, The Art of Jesse Littlebird. Come down, check it out. I will have all his information in the episode notes as always. And for the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.